Okay, now we're going to talk about fluids and tension, specifically surface tension. So what is surface tension? Well, at the interface of two immiscible fluids, basically two fluids that aren't going to mix together, in one case of liquid and gas, oil and water, forces will develop along that surface. And so here's our surface between the two fluids. So those forces that are going to develop cause the surface to behave as if it were a stretched membrane. So molecules in the interior attract each other equally, where molecules along the surface are subjected to a net force due to the absence of neighbor molecules. This intensity of the molecular attraction per unit length along any line of the surface is called the surface tension, and it's designated by a Greek letter. So we will continue your classical Greek education, and that Greek letter that we're going to be using is capital Epsilon. Epsilon. This is another one that I don't do the best job at drawing, but it gets the point across. And so this is a unit of measure that will be in force per length. So you'll be looking at pounds per foot. You'll be looking at newtons per meter. Now, this only happens right at the interface. Right along the surface, you are going to have these forces. So right along those, you'll have that force due to the surface tension. So molecules down here below the surface, molecules up here above the surface, there's no surface tension forces because there is no surface, so there is no tension. Now, it's very interesting because surface tension forces are based on both materials or both fluids that are interacting. So the surface tension between air and water is going to be the different than the surface tension between oil and water. So if we look at the surface tension, air and water, which is a pretty common one, if you look that up, what you'll find is it's 0.073 newtons for every meter. Now remember, Newton's very small, so we're not looking at a very large amount of force. So when we're looking at this, surface tension kind of causes the surface to act like a membrane. So if you can think of a rubber balloon, as you blow into the balloon, it's going to stretch the surface out, and so the surface is trying to hold itself together to contain that pressure. And so if you watched the last video where the gentleman was walking on Custer, they were talking about the surface tension. And that was part of what was going on. He was pushing down on the fluid, impacting the fluid, and then, so his weight was going this way, and then they had the force of the surface tension pushing up. Now, of course, in water, as you can see, that is a very low amount of force. You obviously can't walk on water. You were able to walk on the custard because of the higher surface tension, especially as it started to go through that hardening process from the non-Newtonian fluid.